Interesting. Very rich conversation here. Dr. Taylor talked about excellence, and of course, you're talking about quality of teaching as well. Let me ask you, basic literacy is extremely important for a student to succeed, yes? There are quite a number of students in the Bahamas, and I guess in the United States, who are being left behind. My question is this: in terms of style of teaching, the manner in which we teach students today, should that be going through changes over time, ongoing changes? Is that what you were saying, all of you?
Teach who's in the seat.
Teach who's in the seat. What do you mean?
Teach who's in the seat. You can't come in the front of a classroom and teach people from 2003 right now. It's a total different mindset. And I tell all my colleagues, especially when it comes to the arts, sports, and any extracurricular things, because you can do band in the classroom and do it after school, before school, or whatever. It's not just a classroom thing. Kids today have options, many of them, many options. So they don't have to do band. They don't have to do art. They don't have to do, but the thing is, when you get in the classroom, you need to be able to communicate on their level and communicate and speak. In the police force used to say, you have to speak in a language in which people understand, right?
We have heard, ladies and gentlemen, people talk about the educational system failing. And there are a whole lot of people who, as Dr. Taylor mentioned, he's the senior on this webinar today, who came through an old system and who have done extremely well. Is there anything wrong with the system, or are we just dealing with individuals who need to adjust to the system?
Right. I think this, as a former elementary teacher, obviously first grade, right, literacy, that's what we're talking about, is teaching kids how to read. And I think one of the things that, at least what I see shift is just this focus on, obviously, engagement. When kids are engaged with what they're learning, and Mr. Bailey, he hinted at it, it's like when kids are engaged in their learning, their learning is just going to grow. It's just going to happen, right? And so when you think about literacy, the incorporating choice reading into the things that kids did, less are we doing like everybody reads the same book. Like, remember those days when we all read Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry? Now it's like you read the book that you're interested in, so we can help you, guide you through this process. And then we'll teach you the skills, but we want that interest level to grow a little bit higher. And it obviously that grows when you are interested. If you are like football, why wouldn't you read a book about football? If you want to learn,
saying that the way we teach must change. It has to change over time.
It's like he said, Mr. Bailey said, you have to adapt to the people in the seat, right? So as we are moving forward, we need to respond to the people in our classrooms. And I think that's the big shift, to answer your question directly. Yep.
And I'll just like to add, some of that is making sure to meet people where they are. And I think that's what Ashley's saying, is that you need to make sure some people are visual learners, making sure some people need repetition. So incorporating that into whatever's being done, I think is definitely important. I know from my elementary school education, my grandmother taught for 43 years, and she was my third grade teacher. So that style of learning really helped. And then moving into university, we never had everything that we needed, but I didn't know that until I went off to the Culinary Institute of America. They made sure that we went to the hotels to see what they were doing. We went off to Europe, and that's how we learned and progressed. So I think the style definitely has to change, especially in the culinary field. It's always changing. It's always evolving. You need to learn best practices for what you need right now. So definitely, at some point, you need to change with the times.
So I am getting from you all that the pedagogical system has to be customized for each student. Is that what you were saying?
So yes, right. First, as a high school principal, I want to say that it's us too. As a high school principal guiding 1,800 students out there, I made the #1 school improvement goal of my school this year to improve literacy across the building. The not sufficient number of the students in my school are reading at or above their grade level. So it's across the board. Now, you're right though, the pedagogy has to change, but the expectation cannot. The outcome and the expectation cannot. How we deliver the learning to them has got to change. Our students are still consuming the same amount of information. They might be consuming it from this rather than from printed hard copy textbooks. But remember, why is literacy important? The skill of being literate is being able to consume information, parse it, and then interact with that information. What do I then understand that's going to make me think differently, that's going to lead me to a new solution, to a problem I didn't anticipate? We want them to be able to do that. And if we keep that as the goal, we can change the way we deliver it, but we still want them to be able to do the same things with the information that they get. Literacy is still important, and I venture to say will always be paramount. If you cannot consume information appropriately, I think we can look around our world and see the outcomes of that.
So based on what you're saying, what are you saying, Dr. Dillette? It tells me that, there's no point in talking about a system of education failing if we are customizing pedagogy for each student.
Well, and then I think we can go back to saying, well, is the standard that we customize, right? Because as Mr. Bailey said, and all of you have said in different ways, right? If we just go in our straitjackets in a narrow mind saying that no matter who shows up to my classroom today, I'm only teaching in this way, that is when we are failing our students, regardless of whether we're teaching first grade reading or we're teaching in university systems. And so there does have to be a layer of, okay, who is in my class this year? What's happening in their household? What do they already know? And trying to teach to that level. And yes, that makes it harder on educators because you may have a classroom where there are different levels of students. And that kind of goes back to that resource discussion of figuring out, how do we best resource our classrooms? Maybe it's teachers' aides, maybe it's more books. I don't know what, it'll be different things for different classrooms, but I think the focus has to be, meeting those students where they are, and that should be the standard. And so the standard is essentially that we need to continuously evolve. And that may look like also for us as educators to make sure that, for example, across the Bahamas, is there continuing education for educators that they have to do to make sure that once you're in the field for a while, going back to some sort of schooling yourself to sort of make sure that you are on par with what things have changed since you graduated from university. In a university setting, I'm always reminded that, every year I teach, my students come in, they're the same age, 18 to 21, and I am older every single year. And so in another 10 years, 20 years, like, what am I doing to make sure that I'm still meeting my students' needs? And the same goes, I think, regardless of what kind of educator you are.
And so it brings me neatly to this subject, the quality of the teacher. Let's speak a little bit about that and what we are looking for in terms of what we ought to be looking for in terms of who ought to be teaching our students. Quality of teaching.
Can I say something about that?
Yes.
Because I think that that is so important, right? And as I look, I've been in the United States a long time now, and as I look at the education system, like I said, I worked at Tennessee State, I worked at Alabama A&M, I went to Michigan State, I worked at, I'm now working at Florida A&M. And what I see is that our teachers, you know, need to, like somebody said, right, need to meet the students where they are and take them to where we want them to be. But how do you do that if you don't have the necessary training? So if you look at, say, if you look at Europe, right, a lot of the teachers that teach in Europe are really, you know, they're masterful in their areas, right? Take, for instance, I'll give you an example, and it goes back to the Bahamas. When I took chemistry in the Bahamas, I took at Government High, I took it from a man, English from England named Grimshaw. Grimshaw was a master chemist by any means, right? He knew chemistry in and out. And he had worked in the field, obviously, okay? But I could give you another extreme case that some kids over here find in the high school. In the high schools, you might have football coaches teaching chemistry, you know, and other people teaching chemistry who are not masterful in the area, right? They're not really chemists. And so I feel that our teachers need to be and also trained in such a way that they can actually, you know, understand better how people learn. And the learning that we have to understand now is learning that changes with the time, you know, with the technology, because everyone has to agree. Technology is very important to learning too, and can be used very masterfully to help people to learn. So I feel that, you know, we complain here, and I've heard the same complaints from, let's say, the University of Tennessee. A lot of the students who are coming in now in the sciences, and I'm in the sciences, they don't have the chemistry background, or even, and some of them not the math or physics background, right? So you have these students coming in, but I'm saying that we have educational, college of education, schools of education, and we are preparing the teachers. So the teachers out in the high school should be the ones that really teach, bring the students up to the level that they need to be, you know? So those are the dynamics that we have to work out, you know, to make sure that we have teachers that can carry the students to where they need to be too, so that they can go further.
Mm-hmm. If I can chime in quickly of the run at one here, when you think, going back to your question about quality of education, and the first thing that came to my mind, or quality of teachers, right? How do we keep, you know, highly qualified people in the classroom? First, I think we just got to give respect to teachers. What they have endured over the last 2 years, and before that, but really over the last 2 years, to go from model to model, distance learning to hybrid to in-person, it's just something that I think which allowed parents to truly see what goes into educating kids. And so I think there was some appreciation, but now more than ever, the spotlight is on teachers, especially in America, like, you're teaching CRT or you're doing this, like, and so they're just, this job is so hard. And so I know this year, for the first time ever, like, trying to hire teachers was a challenge, which in our district, we typically don't have that, in terms of people don't want to do this job because of all the outside factors. So I think, and part of answering your question is, to attract quality teachers, we just got to first start paying some respect and appreciation to the people doing this work each and every day.
And pay them more. Pay them more.
That was going to be my next point.
That's one of the main things.
Right. And that's going to be my next point. Like, we have to work on our school experience, even pre-K, all the way to higher ed to make sure kids are having good experiences so they want to come back into education, right? If they're not having good experience, why would they want to sign up for this, right? And then with that is like, how do we compensate people for the work that they're doing? Because they're doing really good and we know important work. And the last piece, Alana kind of hit on this in terms, how do we continue to coach and mentor and support their growth as the world is changing, as the research-based best practices are changing as well. Those are the key components, because I think, yes, we need quality teachers, but I think we have to start with just that respect, appreciation, and celebration of the people doing this hard work.
Ambassador Jones, right now, I agree. Right now, not only are we struggling to improve the quality of teachers, there just aren't enough teachers. I have vacant teaching positions at my school with no one to hire. Not enough people are entering this profession anymore. To Dr. Taylor's point about the sciences and all the other areas, I opened up with a conversation about why I got an education. All of my degrees are in science. I have a bachelor's degree in pre-medicine biology, a master's degree in agronomy with an emphasis on plant genetics. And I worked in scientific research for 5 years at the University of Georgia, and I was doing it well, but I didn't enjoy it. I moved to education for two reasons. One, I'm from a family of educators in the Bahamas, but also the thing that I opened up, my initial comment was that I'm from what I believe to be a country and a culture that celebrates, or at least used to celebrate, educators. But I don't know that that's continuing to happen. That was happening when I was a child. I don't know that that's continuing to happen. So young people are not growing up seeing education as a proud career to enter. And we sometimes as adults contribute to that. How often do you find a brilliant young person and you tap them and you say, hey, I think you'd make a good teacher? Almost never. We always tap the brilliant kids and say, we think you should be a lawyer, you should be a doctor. We need, if we are going to improve the quality of education, Ambassador Jones and everyone else, not only do we need to return to a day where more people enter this profession, we also want to be able to attract the gifted people to consider this profession as a proud option for them.
Yeah. And
so how we do that is a complex topic.
I can't remember who touched on it, but we got to create community. We got to create mentorship. We got to have a place, a safe space for teachers to be able to say what they need to say and not be judged for it. We have to pay teachers. And by we, I don't mean just in the United States of America. I'm talking about in the Bahamas as well. Because I know of many people who are great educators and retired the system and weren't even making 40 grand. That's a shame. For the way that they educated, for the people that they educated, people who sit in offices just like we do, and we can say, and I'm sure that all of us can say, we probably made more in our first arena in teaching than our teachers ever did, and they were great. People who are in still teaching right now and still not being compensated, still show up every day on time, still educating people's kids, probably their grandkids, probably their great grandkids, and not being compensated and not being celebrated, like Mr. Bethel said. And even in that, did we really, really celebrate them if we didn't take care of them? Because, these people have to live. They have kids too, that they have to go home after they've dealt with our kids and us for the day. They have to go home and deal with their kids and their husbands and their wives, right? Another thing is we have to make, someone said it also, we got to make the experience a great one, so that people would want to. I had great teachers. I had fun at school. I wanted to get up and go to school every day. My teachers had a space where I could not only learn, I could communicate with them, right? It was more than just Mrs. So-and-so, Mr. So-and-so teaching me math or English. We could sit down and talk about things about life, and they would give me sensible conversation and sensible advice to say, this is what I think you should do. This is how I think you should move. This is how I think you should act. And this is why I think you should do this. Right? And encourage those students who we see have the gift. Man, look, you should come, you should get into teaching. This is why. And how do we encourage that? By giving them chances in the role in the classroom. In my band classroom, there are very few moments that a student isn't in front of the classroom. What I mean is this: in the first beginning months, I established a system of what needs to be done in class. And once I established that, part of their grade is to get up in the classroom, and you get up, and you don't need to be Mr. Bailey. I want you to be authentically you, but this is it on the board. This is what we do every beginning 15, 20 minutes, warm-ups, whatever. You get up and you do it. You experience that pressure, you experience what that's like. And we have a conversation about it afterwards. And every class, every child in each class gets a chance to do it. And maybe some performances, I step out of the way, you go direct the band. You pick the songs, you warm them up. I may teach or I may step in to show you, okay, this is what you need to correct. But students can't just be sitting down in the classroom on the receiving end. They have to have buy-in. You got to let them give something to the classroom so they can feel what that's like to accomplish something, to achieve a goal.